All right, we're gonna make chicken and dumplings, and I learned this from Grandma Mae. You know, Nana wasn't a big chicken and dumpling maker, but I loved them and learned how to make them from her. Now, the first thing we do is we're going to stew our chicken, and that's where we'll get the broth from. So I like to use a chicken that's rather small, no more than 4 pounds, somewhere between 3 and 4 pounds makes a good chicken. So I've already washed it and put it in my pot. And I don't cook it with any gizzards or anything. So I've taken 1 onion and chopped it up, 2 stalks of celery, and 1 carrot and just chopped them up. And we're gonna stew this along with the chicken. And then I'm gonna add some salt. So we're gonna put a lot of water in here, so I'm gonna add some salt. And only 2 seasonings. I like to use a little bit of parsley flakes. If you have fresh parsley, you certainly can use that. And the seasoning called Nature Seasoning. It has onion and garlic, salt and pepper in it. So I'll just put that in. Again, we're gonna be using a lot of water, so you need a lot of spice. All right, so now what we need to do is bring this over and put some water in it. So I'm gonna put cold water in. And I want to cover the chicken. And what size pot is this, Jim? Do you remember? I don't remember, but it's a big pot. It's a heavy one too, so. Okay, that looks good. So now I'm going to take this over and put it on this cooktop. So I'm going to put this on like about medium high. And what I want it to do is to come to a boil. And when it comes to a boil, I'm going to turn it down to simmer. We don't want to boil the chicken because that'll make the meat tough. So what we're going to do is just bring it to a boil, turn it down, and then let it simmer until the chicken is cooked. And that's going to take probably about an hour or so. Okay, you can see the water has just started to come to a boil. And I'm going to turn it down just a little bit because I want it to simmer. Let's see. My chicken in there. And I'll go ahead and cover it with the top. So just a little bit. And then just let it finish cooking. I'll check back again in about 45 minutes.
Okay.
The chicken's been cooking for about 15 minutes, and it's done. I just stick the fork in to feel it, make sure feel like it's tender, and it is. So I'm going to go ahead and try to pick it up and put it in this other little bowl so it can cool. Once it gets cool, I'll just take the skin off and then take the chicken out. I'll take the chicken off the bone. All right, so I've got my broth. I like to just leave the onions and the celery and the carrots in it. You could strain those out if you wanted to, but I'm gonna leave them in.
Go.
To make the broth even richer, I'm gonna add this stuff. It's called Better Than Bouillon, and it's really good. If I can get the top off. Now, if you don't have any of this, you can certainly use a couple of bouillon cubes. So I'll just add about a tablespoon. Stir that in. And I'm gonna turn this up because I want the broth to boil again. And once it starts boiling, we can go ahead and add the dumplings.
Okay.
To make the dumplings, I'm going to use the White Lily self-rising flour. You want to make sure it's self-rising. And Crisco. And I've got a little bit of whole milk here as well. So we're going to add 3 cups of self-rising flour. And you don't have to weigh it, it's not that, it's not necessary. All right, so for every cup of flour that I use, I'm gonna use a tablespoon of Crisco. And it's like a heaping tablespoon. There we go. Wipe my hands. I'm just use this to kind of cut the Crisco in. I've never used butter, but I guess you could. I've just always used Crisco. That was always what Grandma Mae used. So. You want to cut it in till the shortening's like pea-sized. That looks good. So next we'll add, just kind of make you a little well in here, and we'll add some milk. And we're going to add just enough to make a dough. So we need to add a little more. And I like to use my wooden spoon. So we're going to add just a little bit more milk to this. And this is going to make what I call a shaggy dough. Let me scrape this off here. Now I'll just use my hands, kind of mix in the last little bit. This dough, you don't want it to be wet. You want it to not be a sticky dough. So see, this still is maybe a little bit too wet, so I'm going to sprinkle just a little bit more flour in, just kind of mix it through. All right, this looks good. So you've got a ball of dough that holds together and it's not sticky. And I think we're ready to start rolling it. So that's what we want. All right, I'm gonna wash my hands and then we'll roll it out. I'm just gonna sprinkle the countertop with the flour, kind of smooth it out so it doesn't stick to my island top. Gonna give this a little bit of a knead. Now this extra bit of flour that we pick up as we're rolling it and cutting it is what's gonna thicken our dumplings, the broth. Okay, I'm gonna flatten it out, bring in a little bit more flour, put a little on top, and flour my rolling pin too. I'll just roll it out. And I like mine to be on the thinner side because it's self-rising flour, so it's gonna rise up a little bit. So these are rolled dumplings. And as these cook, they kind of grow in size a little bit, so that's why I like to roll mine on the thinner side. You roll them too thin though, then they cook apart in the broth. You can do this with a pizza cutter if you want to. So I'll show you, this is about the thickness that I roll it to. Okay, now our broth is at a rolling boil. Let's look at that. And I'm going to go ahead and just start dropping the dumplings in. So you want to make sure there's plenty of boil going on, that it's really rolling, so that the dumplings cook like they're supposed to. Turn it up a little bit more. Now they're floating on top, and as they cook and get done, they start dropping down a little bit. So this is the last of the dumplings going in. And I'm just gonna stir the pot a little bit, just very gently so you don't tear up your dumplings. And I'm gonna turn the heat down a little bit so it's not quite a heavy boil. You just want a very kind of a light boil, like that. And while they're cooking, I'm going to take the meat off of the chicken.
Go for it.
All right, you can see they're just at a gentle boil, and these are starting to cook up real good. You can tell the color, they're almost translucent, little bit of translucency in them. And then these are some of the last that I put in, and you can see they still haven't cooked enough. So we're gonna just go ahead and let them continue to cook and just gently stir them every once in a while so that they don't stick to the bottom. Now when these are done, I'll take the chicken and put it in and let it heat up a little bit with the dumplings before I serve them. I think the dumplings are about ready. They look really good. Now, if you want your gravy to be a little thicker, just get about 2 tablespoons of cornstarch and a half a cup of cold water and dissolve the cornstarch in the cold water and put it in with the dumplings, and that will thicken it right up. Now, you want to make sure you keep stirring it ever so often, because once they get done, they sink to the bottom and they'll stick to the bottom of the pot, and we don't want that. So now I'm ready to go ahead and add the chicken. And this was all from the chicken that we cooked earlier. We'll just add that in there and let it warm up, and then we'll be ready to eat.
Good.
All right, I haven't added any cornstarch, but they've just thickened up nicely. And I'm gonna go ahead and just plate them up so you can see what they look like. Lots of chicken in here, so it makes really a good meal. And that's your chicken and dumplings.